Alchemist Fire. Spicy. A classic fantasy archetype. You don't. God damn it! I'm taking these things off. A classic fantasy archetype leaving a notable gap in D&D 5e is the Alchemist. The idea of a non-magical potion crafting archetype has been completely unavailable in any official publication from Wizards of the Coast, save for the Alchemist and the Artificer Unearthed Arcana, in which case it's still a magical spellcaster. I think what they presented there is more of a list of items as features, but what's there is actually a really cool set of alchemical items that anyone that picks up Alchemist supplies should be able to create. I actually run Alchemist Fire as it appears there instead of the one in the player's handbook because it's just so much better. It kind of seems like people were expecting this spell list Alchemist, and the Artificer just didn't really allow for that. The other idea is to basically focus on the character that strictly attacks by way of what they create through their alchemist supplies, but the rules for tools don't really give hard and fast set rules as to how to do that, and alchemical items as they appear don't really scale as you level up. In addition to that, all the alchemical items are improvised weapons, and you don't get that in any base class. The archetype really feels too rich to pin down to just a single subclass, so that's why people have taken to homebrewing in order to make their Alchemist class a reality. The Alchemist class by Mage Hand Press has been widely requested by my viewers, and I actually got the chance to sit down and play this during a campaign called Scales and Tales, which you'll be able to find whenever my buddy Tyler Thrasher actually releases the podcast. Thrasher is a really cool guy. He's actually an alchemist himself that uses science to create art. He crystallizes a lot of bugs and skulls and other organic materials to make, and really what he does is sculpture. I'm going to throw up some of his artwork around here, and if you guys ever hear about Thrasher coming to your city, you should definitely go to one of his shows. They're a really cool, unique blend of science and art, and he actually demonstrates a bit of his process as he goes along. While the class itself is completely solid and very balanced for 5th edition, I had some kind of flavor nitpicks of my own because I think I approached the Alchemist with my own sense of this is strictly like a chemist sort of a class, like a potion making only sort of a class, and I feel like that bias kind of colored my initial opinion of it. So whenever I posted on Twitter that I had some nitpicks with the class, Mage Hand Press actually reached out so I could talk with their designer, Mike Holik. After the breakdown of this class, I've got the interview with Mike ready to go, so this is going to be a bit longer of a video if you want to see the whole thing. But if you're really into homebrew, you really should, because we had a great conversation, and it was a really unique peer into someone who actually is a successful class designer of, homebrew content for D&D. Creating a class that creates items that get stronger as you level up can be a bit difficult to balance, but Mike achieved this with a really interesting design that we'll talk about in the interview, and why don't we just go ahead and get into the breakdown. The Alchemist gets a d6 hit die, proficiency in light armor, simple weapons, bombs, alchemist supplies, and the herbalism kit. Its saving throws are dexterity and intelligence, and they get their choice of 3 skills from either arcana, history, insight, medicine, nature, perception, sleight of hand, and survival. First level gives us natural philosopher and bombs. Natural philosopher allows you to add half your proficiency bonus to skill checks made to identify herbs, potions, poisons, and other alchemical substances. Bombs are going to be the alchemist's core damaging item, and if you're going to play this, it's worth it to really understand how this mechanic works. You gain the ability to create bombs, which are mixtures of explosive components. Instead of using the attack action to attack with a bomb, you may instead use the use an object action to give the bomb additional properties and attack with it. When you use the bombs in this way, they more powerfully synergize with your alchemist build, using intelligence for the bomb's damage roll, but still dexterity for the attack roll. The bomb explodes after hitting a target, and all creatures in a 5-foot radius centered on the target must succeed on a dexterity saving throw, or take half the damage. Bomb formulae comes in at 2nd level, allowing you to choose 3 formulae from the vast formula options in the supplement. I love the customization here, and you really feel like you're creating this arsenal of special explosives when you make your character, painting an even more vivid image of your hero. Also at 2nd level, you get your subclass, called a Field of Study. These fields grant you an additional formula, as well as either bonus proficiencies or utility features. The subclasses include the Amorist, something of a love doctor that uses pheromone bombs to charm their enemies, Apothecary, a more healing-centric alchemist focused on their potions, Ionizer, a sci-fi sage of energy and matter, Mad Bomber, which is exactly what it sounds like, Mutagenist, an alchemist that uses mutagens to enhance themselves and their allies, Ooze Rancher, alchemists that employ oozes to suit their needs, Venom Smith, with a focus on poison, and Xeno Alchemist, an experimental alchemist that grafts monster parts to their body. Your choice grants you additional features at 6th, 10th, and 18th levels. 3rd level gives us Reagent, a feature which gives you reagent dice that may be expended to either create potions or add to the damage of one of your bombs. These are pretty precious resources, so I'd be careful to make sure that you only really fully load up a bomb if you have advantage on an attack roll. Using reagent dice to make potions requires 10 minutes, and the potions are good for 24 hours. Nearly every potion in the game is possible to craft here, and there's even a list of brand new potions created just for this class. You regain reagent dice after a long rest, or the ones that you spent to add damage on a short rest. In addition to the standard array of ability score improvements, at 4th level you get the Discovery feature. It functions similarly to the Warlock invocations, allowing for even further customization of your alchemist. You have options like Craft Homunculus, which gives you a craftable Homunculus familiar, Firebrand, allowing you to do your best impersonation of Melisandre, or even an Ooze Cowboy, giving you an Ooze mount. Honestly, this class has so much versatility to it in these first 4 levels that the number of potential combinations for character creation is basically endless. It's impossible to not be able to create the alchemist that you have set in mind. The Flashbang is given at 5th level, which allows you to use your bonus action to prevent creatures within 5 feet of you from getting reactions until the start of their next turn. This defensive feature allows you to escape opportunity attacks, something that will always be relevant in combat. 6 levels later, you get the Evasion feature as per the Monk and Rogue. 15th level gives us Blast Coating, allowing the alchemist to automatically succeed on saving throws against their own bombs and avoid taking damage. Finally, the 20th level capstone is Philosopher's Stone, something like D&D Uranium. Constructing it takes a week's work and 1,000 gold pieces worth of materials. Only you gain the benefits of the stone, which are 1. Your reagent dice now all refresh on a short rest, even those you use for potions. 2. You may now brew potions as an action instead of 10 minutes. And 3. You also age 10 times slower and you can no longer be magically aged. On top of all this, you have the option to create a nuclear bomb by placing your Philosopher's Stone inside of a bomb. This deals 10d10 plus 10 force damage to everything in a 1 mile radius, destroying the Philosopher's Stone in the process. If a creature fails to save, it takes the full 200 damage, and creatures that succeed take half damage instead of none. I brought the nuke up in my talk with Mike Holik as something I felt may be somewhat problematic, even at 20th level, as it could create a situation where the party can cheese dungeons by blowing this thing up inside of it. But as you'll hear in the interview, Mike intentionally put this as a subheader for DMs to simply cross out if they feel it's problematic. I'm inclined to agree with his policy there, as the Philosopher's Stone itself is incredibly strong for any alchemist, and you'll seriously feel the loss if you do decide to detonate the bomb. Setting this thing off without killing your allies requires some careful planning, powerful spellcasting, and leaving the alchemist pretty exposed to detonate it. It introduced a strategy that I hadn't initially really thought about just due to the insanity of its potential damage output. The rest of this video is going to be Mike and I's interview, so if you'd like to just skip to my final grade and thoughts, the timestamp is appearing right now. There are minor audio issues in the first minute or so of the interview, and the video file for my webcam was unfortunately corrupted. But the talk was just so great that I didn't want to re-record this whole candid interview and make it feel less natural. So without any further ado, here's Mike Holik. So Mike, thanks for sitting down with me today, man. I'm not sure if they really told you what I do for YouTube, but I do a lot of like homebrew review and kind of more of a mechanical breakdown of what, whether or not some stuff is potentially balanced for 5th edition and it doesn't really fit the general convention of what we're used to seeing in the game. And
okay, so you're a man after my own heart is what I'm hearing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I sat down with Benjamin Huffman a few times to talk about, different stuff in the game, and I've fallen in love with his stuff, and so he put me into contact with you guys whenever your Alchemist came up as a request on my channel. So I'm playing it for we're doing an all Kobold campaign with my buddy Thrasher.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, it's so much fun. I love this class. It's super solid. And I think they put me into contact with you because I did say I had a few little nitpicks, but they lay them on me. Yeah, they aren't really mechanical in nature. The main thing was the way that you guys handle the bombs. I understand that bombs need to be like they need a combat precedent in order to really work in a game where there's fighting, and I think it's definitely on flavor. However, what for me it seems like some of the bombs don't necessarily function as what you would think a bomb would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So, and it's important to acknowledge that at the end of the day, we are messing with this perception of where alchemists are from like a Pathfinder perspective as well as a D&D one. And of course, lots of people are going to have very different perspectives on this, but it's worth even noting that in Pathfinder 2, their 12 base classes are basically the same as D&D 5, but they replaced the Warlock with an Alchemist. They just liked that class so much. So it was important to us that we kept at least some of the through lines from Pathfinder for people who were familiar with it coming from that end.
Okay.
Now, a lot of our bombs, the reagents that we try to do, I really wanted them to feel a little bit more like this kind of between potions and bombs. In a much earlier version of the class, we had an entire subclass that was like literally giving you spells you could cast through your bombs. Okay. Like load up a spell with all the components, shake it up, throw it, then boom, it's a darkness spell or something.
Right.
Now, we didn't go quite that far because of the at-will nature that all of these bombs have, which was part of the design ethos for me. I wanted you to have something you could do every turn that was interesting.
Right.
Very much like a rogue, right? So that's something that we couldn't entirely implement. But yeah, some of them go like out there. Like a bramble bomb is not what one would consider normally a bomb. Like that's definitely more of a spell kind of effect.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean another thing that I know it's difficult to balance for these like item-based classes is that what's to keep your teammates from getting the items that you're getting, and then you guys just make completely overpowered like combinations.
There's a super interesting fix for that in the class, and that's there's two interesting things about that. One is that most people aren't going to have proficiency with bombs, but they still will be able to use them. The second thing is that you actually, if you want to add your like full damage to them, you have to take the use an object action rather than the attack action.
Right.
So that's what gives you. This is a super out there thing that trips a lot of people up when they see it because they go, why am I not just taking the attack action, like one attack, and then my bomb does more damage? If I made your bombs deal more damage, you could hand those to an army of kobold friends or just your allies, and now they're throwing these 3d10 bombs. So by switching the action to use an object, which I think is thematically appropriate you're priming it and giving it that extra like alchemist kick. And if you wanted to build something that was multi-classed, then you're probably still going to use the attack action to make use of extra attack. You just don't get all of your extra bomb damage.
Right.
Yeah, that's maybe the most like I'm maybe the most proud of that compromise. It definitely handles that whole like items as a mechanic balance that we had to strike the best.
Right. Yeah, I and that's another thing I would love to see maybe out of like Artificer, going forward. I know that they announced they've got their official one that they're about to publish, but like I always thought it would be interesting to see like an extra use an object instead of like an extra attack, extra use an object out of the Artificer. But then I was like, man, that's a little finicky, and I know that could get bizarre, but I see how it can get self-balancing. For me, I really think what it came down to is, I envision Alchemist as something of more potion-focused. And you guys definitely get that across with the reagents. I'm really glad that we were actually playing at 3rd level so that I can get use out of the reagents, and, that keeps it up to par as a non-magical healer option, as a more utility-based like character in the group. That definitely got what I know you guys were going for across. I almost wish there was some way to do that at 1st level though. Like, yeah,
it's extremely tough because you need an entire resource tied to potion creation, and we were careful not to give you too much always when you're designing a base class, your first 3 levels are the most difficult ones to figure out. You can't give too much at 1st level or it becomes an easy dip. If you give too much by 2nd level, it still might be an easy dip, but you can't overload your first 2 features and have all the, there's a lot to consider here. So it ended up going to 3rd. In a perfect world, I would have loved to have it at 2nd, but by that point, it felt like there was some sort of mechanical overload that you're having to learn all of these, bombs and the special bombs, which you really need to keep the game interesting. Otherwise, you're just like a worse warlock. Like not worse as in you're dealing less damage, but that you feel less versatile. So we really needed to get those bomb formula out there early, and the reagent were pushed to 3rd, which is a little upsetting. But because the dice progression follows levels, 3rd level is really when you start getting the most use out of it anyway.
Okay.
So there was that was definitely always going to be a compromise. It's always hard to find where you put those key features at the beginning.
Again, it's like I love the reagent feature. I really dig that you guys were able to create a way to make potions without really throwing it completely out of whack, because you guys definitely achieved what you were going for with that. But yeah, I think even if it was just like potions of healing at first level, I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I would have loved to get to like a smaller cost.
Yeah.
Like 2 potions of healing for 1 reagent die. And that maybe is something I could even still implement at some point if I ever revisit this. Doubling the number of potions of healing you can get, simply because that's such a core kind of basic starting thing.
Right.
I just didn't want you to, suddenly become like the most powerful healer in the game, and that's such a fine line to cross because they're so stingy with healing in 5th edition.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny too because you talk about it as a support thing. I consider the potions the interaction tier of the class, because you're interacting with the other players at the table, giving them potions, letting them use them,
Right.
and it gives you a really that's the level I almost feel it interacts with. So it's tough to balance for all those different kind of like mindsets as well. It's a super interesting, like the way reagent dice work is super interesting, and it allows you to kind of choose whether you're going to be an explosive bomb or a potion master, kind of on a given day by day. Which so yeah, it's tough to balance around that as well, because if you make them the best healers in the world, you might also incidentally make them the best explosives experts in the world.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and initially I had really thought that what alchemists really need. And, even going into this, before we got to sit down and talk, I was really thinking, like, man, what they really need is a feature that allows alchemical items to scale to keep them up to par to make, like, alchemist fire better. Looking at it again, I'm like, no, that item is just kind of garbage. It's cool, like, but I can understand why, like, you chose to go this direction instead of, yes, alchemical items scale now. And
the alchemical items are they're a bit trash.
Yeah.
And ideally you don't want to have to be tied to them when you're creating a class like this, which is why we created bombs instead of just like special alchemist fire.
Right.
Or completely renamed them. It was one of those things where I'm sitting, you sit there and you fiddle with it and you're like, this is just bad. Like to like do a side talk about something I had to implement in our science fiction 5e book Dark Matter. We created some concussion grenades, which were really similar to alchemist fire, so that they're balanced, which are just grenades. They deal some thunder damage. They're not good. They're okay at first level when you don't have a lot of other damage options, but it's just the nature of the beast, where if you want it to be balanced with 5e and the option isn't great, but people expect to see it, well, maybe it's not going to be a great option.
Yeah.
So we were smart enough not to do that with the alchemist, so that you do have like a legitimate like damage dealing option, so you don't feel like, oh man, I'm like a worse warlock. I'm just using, but my cantrip is bomb.
Right.
That was something we wanted to avoid and give you a lot of like a lot of unique approaches to the way you fight.
Okay. And as far as the bombs went, I mean, I already kind of touched on that in the bomb formula and everything.
It sets a certain expectation for the way your character's supposed to play,
right.
and it sets a sort of flavor that's less alchemical master and more harried mad scientist. Yeah, definitely. And one of the subclasses is mad bomber.
Oh, yeah.
It's that's also something we inherited from Pathfinder. I felt like I wanted to make, if I was going to use a feature that was kind of similar in the same tier, no matter what other tricks we added on top of it with reagent dice and different discoveries that changed the way they work, I felt like that was something we needed to keep, just so that we didn't confuse the hell out of those people who were coming specifically to capture something that they didn't get in 5th edition, but they had in this other system.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely something I feel like I could have improved on if we were completely untethered from that sort of tradition. But delivering on what people kind of expect is part of the game.
Right.
I didn't do all of the work to make an alchemist. People have already had that work done in their minds already, and I'm trying to tap into what they know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, and I guess that's the subtle tricks of writing this stuff.
Yeah, and see, like the one thing, if it were me, like, I mean, if I was being consulted on any kind of a design thing on this, only thing I would say is like maybe have them as concoctions, or
that's a good rename. Yeah, definitely.
Because
it checks out too, because you're mixing and matching them with stuff as you go.
Yeah. I mean. All in all, it's solid. Like everything mechanically totally works. It functions. But yeah, and there's just like that one. Like I said, it's such a weird nitpick for me to just be like, oh, but bomb. You know, I yeah. But
no, definitely. This is where like expectations come into play, right? Like you came into it with a very different expectation. And to be fair, a lot of the fluff and the first ribbon feature, Natural Philosopher, definitely sets the stage for something that is not. I build bombs real good.
Right.
This isn't a Mad Bomber class. It just has bombs as a core like damaging feature. Yeah, definitely. I absolutely see where you're coming from. That. Yeah. You're not totally lost in your own world here. I get where you're from.
Well. The one thing I was gonna say on Flashbang, like everything else up until like at 5th level, I'm like that. I'm not always a fan of just getting an item as a class feature, but this
one's a little weird because I don't actually go, this is an item called a Flashbang.
Right.
I just go, you can do this.
Yeah.
Which is a little strange, but I felt like I needed to in order to keep the theme, like fluff it as an item.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange, but this was like so core to the way that you have to play this class. I don't know. You're
No, we're I think we're only going to stay at 3rd level for this one. It's a 4-session one-shot thing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Shot,
you'll notice if you're an alchemist, and this is something we noticed in playtesting all the time. If you're an alchemist and you get pinned in by a bad guy who is right in your face, and you don't have a teleport, if you didn't take teleportation bomb, you need a way to not die because your main attack is a ranged weapon attack, and that's built into the class. So Flashbang gives you an ability to just go, you don't have reactions, I'm going to step away now, and then we'll deal with this later. That was so key, and it makes the class a lot more flexible. You have to be careful because you can flashbang your allies. It's not completely, it's not completely broken and out there. But it does add this level of like, oh, now I can like maneuver.
Yeah. Well, it does. It totally works. It does everything you would expect it to. The mechanic is definitely there. And yeah, after the session that we've had last time, I can definitely see, disengaging in a manner like this is, that I think you guys definitely got it across. Again, it's just like, it's always a weird little irk for me whenever I see not really an item, but an. Yeah.
No. I'm with you there too, and I'm generally against that as well. It's one of those things that like, hey, for this specific class, I had to make some compromises because we created something that felt less like, and it's also to make this class really stand apart. I didn't want it to drive too closely to where the like transmutation wizards domain is.
Yeah, you can't step on. I got you.
Yeah, wizards in D&D take up a large amount of thematic space.
Yeah.
Because each school occupies a pretty large area of like characters.
Yeah.
So this kind of like very magical version of an alchemist we wanted to step away from. So finding this mundane one and finding like features that made sense was ultimately a big challenge.
Yeah.
So giving them a lot of like equipment focused features was one way to do that. Even though it feels very strange to say like, well, can you hand me that flashbang?
Right.
No, I guess you just don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
Which maybe is fair, depending on the way that you fluff your alchemist. I leave the fluff a little bit open for like how you conduct doing alchemy.
Right.
As long as it's not just straight up and down magic. Because I didn't want that. That's kind of what Pathfinder did in their version. They were like, other people can't use your bombs because it's inherently magic, and that somehow means they can't use them.
Yeah. And then giving those stipulations of like, if it spends more than 6 seconds outside of like your alchemist satchel, then it loses its potency. Then that's like, wait, what? That just, what?
Yes, it's that, and it also just feels bad. Like it feels bad to play, and it feels bad to rationalize. So I found like clever ways around as much of this as I could. The flashbang is something you mix up on the fly and you throw on the ground. So hopefully that that's the way I envision it. But yeah, it's tough. It's extremely tough.
Yeah.
To kind of find the middle ground here. So I absolutely see where you're coming from.
Well, I mean, again, I dig the feature. I think yes, that something like that is absolutely necessary for your alchemist here. The evasion, totally can see why that's in there. Blast coating, I think, is interesting. I almost wish that were about 5 levels earlier.
Yeah, it's hard to measure how strong this is.
Yeah.
And it's something, this is always something you end up running into when you start making the class table. I don't know how much you've kind of looked into like the way the levels tend to lie out, but when you have, these incremental, I find that there's like a 4-level walk that a lot of classes do, where, you know, ability score improvement, something, core class feature or something, or like subclass feature, right? You always have this like off level as you get to higher levels and you don't have subclasses anymore. And that was 15th level in this case. So blast coding was originally a discovery that I commuted over to, if this makes it more sense, which is why it's so specific. But I kind of went, well, I don't see a case where you're just going to want to take that. It's something that just feels like a general all-purpose buff and keeps you from blowing your face off if you do need to fire something in close range. And by that point, you know, if depending on your subclass, you might have big area bombs that you want to be able to like have some more flexibility with those. But you know, for 15th level, it's maybe a little weak, but you know, once you get the Philosopher's Stone and you're firing off like a literal nuclear bomb, okay, not taking damage from that is exceptionally good.
So is that how that's going to mechanically work out? Is that once you get to 20th level, you do not take damage from this nuclear bomb?
Yeah, you never take damage from your own bombs. Now, I mean, this is, of course, like a huge investment, like a lot of gold, a week of work, and you blow up your core class feature in order to deal stupid damage. But it's stupid damage. But 20th level, you get to flex a little bit on it and have some fun, and we definitely did that.
It's one of those ones that I initially looked at, and I'm like, man, but how does this... What's to keep you from... like? And I know that at 20th level, you're not typically dungeon crawling, but like... You know, what's to keep you from going in and just like nuking the big bad evil guy's like lair and then piecing out? I think the nuke is a little. I get why it's there. It's funny. I love it, but I'm also like, I wonder what that's gonna do to a campaign, though. You know? Yeah,
it kind of depends. This is also something that, because it is kind of encapsulated in sub feature, it's very easy for a DM to cross out with a big black marker.
There you go.
Which is, you know, the nice thing about it, you know, some of these have just like, and that is under its own little subheading. I consider that something that, and I did that on purpose so that a DM could just scratch it out instead of building on to its own feature. So yeah, like the feature works on its own. I was considering for a long time, and I never ended up implementing this because it felt a little disingenuous to go, like, if you use a nuclear bomb, you just never get another one. You just get the one.
Right.
But losing your feature if you're going to play a 20th level character for a long time, I don't know anybody who does that because, that would be a lot.
As far as all the subclasses go, so what I do, I do the same thing for Benjamin Huffman. Anytime that it's a paid content, I don't review the subclasses because I want, you know, I don't want to show those on my video. And
we do have a free version of this on magehandpress.com that includes 2 subclasses, the Apothecary and the Mad Bomber. So you kind of get this. Actually, I think there's a third one. I think you also get Mutagenist. Okay. Yeah, so I think you get all 3 of those for free. You know, and then if you want the complete Alchemist with all of the other rad stuff, like an what did I call it? The Ooze Rancher.
Yeah, Ooze Rancher. That's
the Ooze Rancher, the Venom Smith. Yeah. The Xeno Alchemist is just way out there. That's where you're like grafting monster parts to yourself and to your own little golem. You've got all of those in the complete Alchemist, which is available in the Mage Hand Press store. Let
me, since we mentioned that, let me pull up. I love the Apothecary, and I think it's mostly because, like I was saying to you earlier, I think I had more of the chemist in mind for the Alchemist portion of it. And I think the Apothecary, especially with the, potion toss. I'm like, I wish that had been in the base class. Like, splash potion kind of mechanics like that. And I think that far in at 6th level for the Alchemist, that's going to, you know, discourage any dipping. That just seems like one of those ones where...
if that were the 5th level feature, it would capture your vision a lot better, for sure. I didn't want to. So one of the reasons I didn't end up in the base class was because I didn't want. There's only so much you can like lean into the potion side before, considering we were using the reagents as this kind of shared mechanic, right? There's only so much I wanted to lean into the potion side because, like, frankly, potions are very, very hard to balance. So I mean, it would devalue the class on a round by round basis and make it too strong on like a healing or like a concentration mechanic cheesing basis. Like the fact that potions don't use concentration is very tricky to balance around. This is something that becomes actually very challenging at low levels where, a wizard can concentrate on one effect, they only have a couple of spell slots. If you end up with more potions and spell slots, and you don't need to concentrate on any of those effects, things get very tricky very quickly.
Yeah.
So that maybe that like shows you some of the logic behind like why we leaned that way on it. I thought the apothecary was a really great place to like give you some more flexibility with that if you wanted to take that as your. And originally these were the two subclasses, right? Mad Bomber and Apothecary. So you get to really pick out the gate which one you want to lean into.
Yeah. Yeah, your explanation totally makes sense. It's just one of those things that I'm like, I know there's just some things in 5e that you have like a video game precedent in your head of like, oh, cool, this is how this should play out. But then you can't really design for 5e like the same way you would do for a video game. And I just always think Minecraft splash potions, and I'm like, cool, that'd be awesome if it could work that way. But
yeah, it's very tricky because you find yourself like pushing a little snowball at the top of a hill, and then when you see it in playtesting later, somebody has built this gigantic snowball out of like side mechanics and just and that's ultimately what you do a lot of playtesting for. This class has had a lot of playtesting. It's been like fully rewritten twice. Wow. So the potion toss is. It's funny. I actually had a player who used that like in a fight in a session yesterday, in like at the last session of our campaign to get somebody else up with a potion of healing, like clutch potion of healing. Yeah, and it was great. So I'm glad they took Apothecary. Yeah. But I don't know how I'd feel about a Mad Bomber or a Lazarus running around with one of those.
Okay, I can see how that would be problematic. Well, I mean, not that I don't have a problem with healing word, but I can definitely see whack-a-mole kind of situations happening where
yeah, definitely.
And, okay, that
especially if you get especially since the potions of healing are fairly cheap.
Yeah.
And anybody can also just have them on their person. I feel like that's actually the strength. If only you use the potions, then you can actually give out a lot more because it's tied to your action economy.
Right.
But the nature of potions being you can give them to everybody and spread out the action economy. And then create this like first round Nova where everybody buffs up, or give everyone basically like a healing word thing where they heal themselves at the last minute. Right. That's where also the concentration thing, of course. Potions become very tricky for that sort of thing.
I had not even thought about the concentration aspect of it. Whenever they're mimicking spell effects like that, like potion of climbing. I mean, is it spider climbing?
Potion of climbing is a super weak one, but that's why I was able to give it at such low levels. I guess let me take a look at the spell list again, or the potion list again, and I'll see if there's any in here where I was like, that one, Heroism's pretty strong, Resistance is pretty strong, Flying is really strong, Invisibility is crazy strong. That's why they end up costing so many dice in this class. Growth is actually pretty strong, but because it also makes you a bigger target, it basically balances out.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I actually used Potion of Growth because we needed to get past a city gate, and I was just like, I want to just take a Potion of Growth, and this is my Kobold, and just look like a really ugly Dragonborn. And
oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, it was super fun. I'm really looking forward to that podcast getting out.
Yeah, I'll listen to it. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
that's amazing.
I'll send you guys a link.
Yeah, for sure.
Alchemical Resurrection. So I am always down for more ways of figuring out how to get more healers into the game and keep it thematic and keep it as strong as what the cleric is. And I it's one of those things that I'm like, yes, this is super cool. I wish it was earlier, but I can understand why it has to be this late.
There's a huge gap between 10th and 18th level. I wanted to give them the ability to bring someone back from the dead. Because, it's the straight up and down healer one, right? You got to. You give them the like temp HP, the ability to heal more effectively, all of these things. And then you're like, oh man, 18th level is the first time I get this chance.
Right.
It's tough.
Is there a reason you wouldn't swap this for the 10th level feature? I
would need to get something even more powerful at 18th. So 10th level, one of the things I do when I'm writing subclasses, so just kind of a peek behind the curtain here.
Cool.
I tend to write basically, I call it a scaffolding. So this is just like, this level needs to be this basic idea, this level needs to be this basic idea. And you kind of see like Wizards of the Coast classes, the ones that have a lot of like a very strong through line through them, like warlock subclasses. It's like, oh, I can tell you level by level what a warlock subclass is trying to do. 6th level is always like a 1 per short rest, get out of danger feature for a specific type of danger that's related to your patron. 10th level is a kind of passive defensibility, right? Those are very hard line. I like that. I think people enjoy that when they see like hard through lines throughout stuff. So I got to build a scaffolding around this. 10th level for this class was supposed to be something that was more interaction-y to provide a difference in kind, that was more defensive. 6th level is more interaction to provide a difference in kind between, the lower level kind of potion stuff and the higher level stuff that'll just probably be powerful in some classes. So that was supposed to be hard interaction, which I guess Alchemical Resurrection does, but it'd be hard to figure out what to do for 18th after that.
Right.
It ended up feeling best. Also, 10th might be early for just straight up Raise Dead. It might be. I got to check the spell slots on the spell levels on that.
Well, I think Raise Dead is 5th level,
which comes online at 11th, right?
I think Revivify is
3rd. Yeah, Revivify is 3rd. Yeah, so it actually does fit around that level. Yeah, it's something I was torn on when I wrote it as well. Yeah. You have an uncanny ability to look at the exact things in this book where I'm like, yeah, it was a compromise.
Well,
but I mean, anything you design is ultimately going to have those, and it's about picking the most favorable one. And I felt like at by 10th level, I wanted to give you something that would. I really wanted the apothecary to be about helping your allies. Yeah. So that one is really just like, okay, if you're handing out your potions to everybody already, this is also going to buff them for just a round or so.
Right. All right. So moving on, the Mad Bomber and the mutant. You said the Mad Bomber and the Mutagenist are in the free. Okay, cool. So the Mad Bomber again. Immediately, I'm like, yes, I want to roll up a Goblin Mad Bomber and just go nuts. I mean, you guys hit all the marks with that. I don't think I could ask for anything more. That is super on point. The Mutagenist. So I did my first ever class review was actually on Matt Mercer's Blood Hunter, and he's got his Order of the Mutant in that one. And for him, it seemed like his were very swingy, where it was like everything had it had a bonus, but it also had a huge side effect to it. And the thing I like what you guys did was you managed to get the beneficial bonuses that don't feel extremely, high on the power curve without really introducing all the downside. And, I think that's a big reason why a lot of people don't like the Berserker Barbarian is because it's like you do
that it is not designed for downside. Yeah. And anything that does that has some sort of like, It leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth as a player, and it's amazing that they didn't catch more of that in playtesting for the Berserker. I understand why they implemented it the way it did, but yeah. So this one, I really didn't want to add any downsides, and I also wanted you to be able to like bonus action thing you can do with the mutagen instead of getting a new a new bomb or something else you can do with your bonus action. For this one, it's your bonus action can be switching mutagen. So if you need more dexterity or more strength this turn, you can turn that up a little bit.
Right.
And it also gives you an odd number increase. So it incentivizes you to create this kind of unbalanced character that has lots of odd number ability scores for your physical.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I thought was fun. So you get a bigger benefit if you didn't design your character super well.
Right.
Or super optimally, which I thought was just a little bit of extra fun for me.
You get the quirk.
Yeah, so you just you get it's just a little bit of extra math that'll make people maybe have a better time with it. And then I wanted those extra abilities to be like fine.
Yeah.
I wanted them to be like useful in very like specific circumstances. You need some extra speed. You need some unarmed damage because you're not carrying a weapon. You need some bonus con, right?
Right.
So that you're incentivized to switch anytime you need something.
And the okay, so I was trying to refresh myself. It's been a while because I've been so into the Ooze Rancher that I looking back.
Yeah, that one is the blast, guys. If everybody should at least like look at the Ooze Rancher at some point. It's a blast. It's so good.
Okay, so back on Mutant though. So I mean, you definitely get across the body horror like theme of Mutant.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my old like favorite staples.
Yeah.
To, like inject in something. Like if you're gonna take that route, you're probably somebody who really wants like real body horror stuff going on. Yeah, definitely. Or something that would pop out of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yeah, that guy's just got too many mutations going on. Why does he have a second face? Like, So I play my games, as much as I have these, big serious ideas about game design and like the way I build stuff. I play my games pretty silly.
Oh yeah.
And that probably comes across with the fact that I like have an ooze rancher in this, and one of your mutations for the mutagenist is just now you have 2 extra arms. Have fun with your 4 arms.
Right.
You can just have them. So I believe in also just like giving these options for people that will just really enjoy it. Are the additional arms like super good? They're useful in certain circumstances, but sometimes you just want 4 arms, man.
I don't know if you've seen that Astral Self Monk yet, but man, woo, that was the Unearthed Arcana introduced this monk that has like a set of like 3 to 4 astral arms like that appear. It can get up to 6 extra attacks or something like. I was just like,
oh my gosh,
what are they?
They Unearthed Arcana, for people who write D&D professionally, like write stuff under the OGL professionally. The Unearthed Arcanas are like some sort of horrible nightmare realm where we see glimpses of just D&D spiraling into this unbalanced mess.
Oh yeah.
And normally they bring it back. Almost all the time they bring it back, but oh man, it is so bonkers to us that they start stuff on those kind of levels.
Yeah, I was talking with Ben about that, and I mean, not to get too far down that rabbit hole or anything, but I was like, man, how do they not bring in guys that are like well-known DMs?
Me and Ben, seriously.
Yeah.
Oh man, I hung out with him for so long at Gen Con, talking about classes and stuff, and we basically had the same thing. It was like, I don't know which way they design on this, like who spearheads it and pieces it together, but somebody behind the scenes is balancing it, because their final books typically are better than these kind of early drafts. Our early drafts never look that crazy,
right?
I don't think.
Well, because usually, I mean, you guys are self-balancing one-man design crews, and it just kind of seems like this Unearthed Arcana was like, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and then throw it out to the players and let them be our like proofreaders.
Maybe that's the strategy. It's just do the completely wild stuff and like find stuff that people just glom onto, whether or not it's broken, and then balance it later.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a really good strategy. I mean, it works for somebody like Wizards of the Coast who has a ginormous audience, and anything they do will just it's correct by virtue of them being Wizards of the Coast, so they can just be completely ridiculous. Maybe that's the thing we haven't been figuring out about them. But yeah, it's nuts how how many just 2 extra arms, and I go to these huge lengths to make sure it's balanced, and then Unearthed Arcana is like, here's 6.
Right.
Go nuts.
Yeah, and I'm sure I got the number count on that wrong, but yeah. But so far, I mean, everything else with this, really, I figured I would cover in the video. You guys provide an amazing list of more potions to create, more, these are, what was this at the very end? Oh, all the monstrous graphs. Oh.
Yeah, those monstrous graphs are actually available to everyone, not just like the one alchemist that's extra good at them. So that's something I always want to do in all of my books. If it's a class, I want to give the DM something to play with. So if you really want to attach, like, chop the horns off that monster and sew it to your own head, we've got rules for that.
Nice. Yeah, I made a wizard, tried to make the blue mage from Final Fantasy, and it felt a lot like, I love monstrous classes like that. That feels just super fun to me. And
no, it's extremely fun.
Yeah. Just trying to make it work though is, oh god.
Yeah, no. That is a whole thing. That's another thing I'm very proud about, how we kind of like threaded the needle to find something that is both, when you're talking about something like monstrous classes, this is a whole other rabbit hole I'm going to try not to go down too far on, but it's hard to both use the stuff that the monsters have and also make it player adaptable.
Yeah.
And find ways to make both of those mechanics exist at the same time.
Right.
So that's a whole different thing. I'm very proud about like the sort of design decisions we came to on that.
Well, you guys should be. It's a great. I mean, $5 for this? Are you kidding me? Like, you guys have gone above and beyond here. Like, it's not just solid. It's very well formatted. All the ideas are, you can tell, very well fleshed out. And I think, it's funny because now that we've talked a bit, I do realize the compromises that have to be made to make a thing work for 5th edition, and kind of, like you were saying, meet the precedent that's already set. Correct me if I'm wrong, is this based a bit, or you were mentioning Pathfinder a lot more, and I'm not super familiar with 1st edition Pathfinder, but was this more so based off of the Alchemist from...
I don't want to say based on. We basically took the impetus that people wanted to play the Pathfinder Alchemist and kind of did our own thing with that. So it's in a lot of ways, this is extremely different from the Pathfinder Alchemist. We did our own thing in a lot of different ways here. But just that kind of like some of the core, snippets on the board, like they use bombs as their kind of core thing. And also, I really liked that as like one of the things that made me really want to write this was the mechanical conceit of the bomb as like your core attack option, because it's both an attack roll and a small AoE around it.
Right.
As kind of your ribbon damage. I thought that was extremely interesting to play with. The way they Pathfinder basically had discoveries in the class which were kind of like they had like these kind of flimsy, not very. They were like feats. Pathfinder has a lot of feats. You take them for a lot of different stuff. None of them are big.
Yeah.
And you want to get them in chains and stuff so that they become more powerful.
Right.
They had discoveries, which were almost just like, okay, more feats, but they're just for your alchemist. We made ours much more like the feats in 5th edition, where they're big and they're chunky and they're powerful and they really do shape the way your entire character plays. And you get fewer of them, so those choices are more meaningful.
Yeah.
So that's, so we ended up taking this both in a 5th edition direction and in our own direction. Things like Flashbang, the way we basically handle reagents and the way our bombs work entirely are so different from the way Pathfinder initially.
Yeah.
So it takes that as a launching board and then completely forgets everything that was in the original Pathfinder version.
Yeah.
To give you something that's more unique and more 5e.
Yeah, and I love the access to more potions as discoveries and everything that synergizes with other stuff in the class. It's bookkeeping, but it's not bad bookkeeping.
That was another thing. If you played an Artificer in 3.5, you know what it is like to have a spreadsheet for a character.
Right.
And that was something we were not going to do here. So you could there's a small handful of dice you have to keep track of.
Yeah.
That's the maximum amount of bookkeeping you have to do. And that was super important to me on a design level, because I did not want to play this character and give myself a headache.
Right. I completely recommend The Alchemist. I've been playing it for these last 2 weeks. I've had a blast with it. Pun super not intended there, but what you guys have here is extremely well fleshed out, very well thought out. And like I said in my Twitter post, it wasn't meant to sound like anything negative at all. The nitpicks were kind of like, what I brought up with you. It's like there's some things that I had envisioned that I think it was like, maybe, I don't want to say a bias, but the idea that was there wasn't something I really saw.
No, and that's completely okay. Every character is going to approach a class like with their own kind of idea. My first 2 reads of the Blood Hunter were like the most negative thing you can imagine, because I did not approach it the way I expected. I had a hard time wrapping my head around what they were going for.
Right.
So, and everyone is allowed to have those, and it's okay to call them like nitpicks or biases or whatever. Like, that's completely cool. It's it's my job as a creator to make something that is ultimately still fun, even if you approach it from like a different perspective.
Well, Mike, hey, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for talking.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'd love to have you and maybe Ben on again and just look through more future crazy broken unearthed arcana. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a blast.
All in all, I'm giving Mage Hand Press's Alchemist an A+. Mike's innovative, self-balancing design removes the need for any arbitration in order to keep this class in check with other options available in 5th edition. Those of us looking for more potion crafting-centric alchemists will have no problem feeling right at home with this one, just with a simple renaming of some features to get the flavor across. I've seen other alchemist classes out there, and this is the one that seems to be the most fleshed out and really like play tested heavily. It's funny because like next time I really play a character I'm gonna play for a while, I really want to play Ben's Magus, but like, man, I would love to roll up an apothecary sometime and really get into that character for, beyond just like 2 or 3 levels. So that's going to do it for me on this one, guys. Thank you very much for being here. A huge thank you to Mike Holik and Mage Hand Press for making this all, happen, and for your time and just for letting me pick your brain for a little while. Hopefully, you guys go pick up The Alchemist over on their website. They're also doing their Dark Matter campaign setting. It's more sci-fi centric, and the Alchemist class actually includes some options that are, featured with that campaign setting in mind. So, yeah, go check them out. Mage Hand Press, nice guys. I really appreciate you all's time. So, anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for me on this one. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all in the next one.